let's just keep our fingers crossed that the internet doesn't go out. Please, God.
The internet and the weather cooperates.
Yes. Okay, so we are live, and just remember that there is a delay.
Go out.
I don't.
The internet and the weather cooperates. Yep.
Yes. Oh, you gotta mute it.
I gotta go back and mute.
Okay, we're good.
I'm good. You can see and hear me. I can see and hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, so far it's just you and I right now, so I don't think people are going to join in just yet. I guess as we go on, maybe we should get some theme music or something.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Cue us in. I'll write up something on the piano. So we won't get sued for copyright infringement.
We don't want your fingers cramping on the live broadcast, though.
Hi, new viewer. Feel free to leave a comment and introduce yourself. We are going to actually start in about 5 minutes, so we're just going to give people time to join us. But we're glad you're here with us, and please, again, leave a comment so we'll be able to introduce ourselves to each other and know who's all joining us. Right now we have a viewer.
We have one viewer, huh? 4 minutes early.
Yeah.
All right.
But they're not saying anything, even though.
Put your name in the comments. Tell us who you are. Nice to meet you. Or maybe we already know you.
Maybe. Who knows?
If you don't put your name in the comments, we'll think you're a voyeur. Just watching in, not telling us who you are. Yes, that's the risk you run when you go live, huh?
Indeed. All right, 2 more minutes and we will go live. I'm thinking people are probably gonna join in a little after, but that's fine. We can get started. I just hope that when we start answering questions, the people who ask the questions will be there.
Yeah, that would actually be nice, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't know if Trisha will join us. Trisha was in there last time. She was one of the people who had a question. She sent us the really long email.
I tagged her when I reposted this for today.
Okay. So all of this would be in that. To answer your question, if we did save it, it would be in all of this.
Gotcha.
So this they have to get through this first before the actual thing starts.
Okay.
All of our madness here. All right, looks like we can go now. We can get this thing going. So thank you to our viewers. I see that a few people have joined us. So glad to have you guys with us. Please do leave a comment in the comment box. It should be right below the video. introduce yourselves. Let us know who you are and that you're there. And if you had sent us any questions, let us know that you did email us questions. That way we can acknowledge you as we're answering questions. Also, too, feel free to ask questions while we're all here chatting. This is a open discussion. While Jeff and I will be vocal and speaking, we can see your questions and comments down in the chat box. So please don't be shy. Let us know you're there. Let us know who you are, because we can see that you're here. We just don't know who you are. So welcome. And Jeff and I are going to get started. Jeff, feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure. You a quick message there. You want me to introduce myself first? Okay.
Absolutely.
My name is Jeff Riggenbaugh. I have really spent the better part of the last 17 years running different treatment programs in psychiatric hospitals, working with a lot of people that have traumatic backgrounds of one kind or another. Some of them have actual diagnoses of PTSD or borderline personality disorder, other diagnoses that are associated with trauma. Other people maybe just don't have any actual psychiatric diagnosis, but have struggles with anxiety or relationship problems or any number of things that traumatic backgrounds can obviously affect. So I have done that for, as I said, the better part of the last 17 years. My specific training is in cognitive behavior therapy. I did my post-doctoral training at the Beck Institute of Cognitive Therapy and Research in Philadelphia. I guess in Philadelphia, they're tuning into something else today, huh? Got the Super Bowl going. Got a couple of fans here. But did my training out there, and that really is the most prestigious place in the world to learn CBT. So I went out there and I learned the theory and the research and the science, but really kind of the thing I've become known for is just being the practical tool guy. Taking all that research and that science and just bringing it down to a very practical level where people can use it to actually get better in their lives. I think that's why most of us got into this field, to help people improve their lives. I've been to some of these conferences where these lecturers will get up there and use all this heady language. And I mean, even having the training that I have, you're kind of like, you know, what in the world is this guy talking about? So for me, it's just a passion for making this treatment that works very practical for, you know, people that use it to actually improve their life. One of the other things that really kind of became a passion for me, or really triggered this for me, is I'd have patients come in and tell me kind of what happened in their life, and I would talk with them about CBT. And probably one of the more common comments I got is somebody saying, "Oh, CBT, I had that. That doesn't work for me." And so I'd always be curious and say, "Oh, well, you know, would you mind telling me kind of what you had?" And they would go on in these different, you know, talking about what they did in session. And almost never did they really describe what CBT did. So over time, I really started kind of connecting some dots and realizing that a lot of people are going to therapists who are saying they do some CBT. They were getting a treatment that really wasn't CBT at all. And so the clients were developing the belief that CBT doesn't work. So then it really became a passion of mine to train other therapists. So I've spent the last 10 years spoken in all 50 states. I'm on faculty in South Africa and Australia and Canada, and really have made it a passion of mine to train therapists in, you know, evidence-based CBT, the treatment that really works, but in a practical way so it can help people. So, I mean, that's really one of my big passions. I guess the other thing I would say when introducing myself here is that I've done this kind of clinical work for, as I stated, 17 years. And then 2 years into being on the waiting list for a kidney transplant, I ended up stepping away from the hospital. I ended up having the kidney transplant not too long ago, so I'm doing great, but am forbid now for medical reasons to be in hospital or clinical settings for a period of time. So it's during the course of this time that I really jumped into this coaching sort of stuff, developing some online programs, getting involved with doing more phone coaching, and really enjoying working with people in a more kind of one-on-one, more personal way that the clinical setting just doesn't allow. So that is, I suppose, a couple of things about me and my background and where I've come from and, you know, sort of what I'm doing here with you. I guess I didn't explain what kind of how I met you and how we came to work together, but I've been talking for a while here. Maybe you want to jump in and touch on that.
It's no worries, no worries. Actually picking up where you left off, we actually met through the Personality Disorders Awareness Network, and I know quite a few of you are probably connected to PDAN, and if not, you guys should check them out. That's pdan.org, pdan.org. And I have been a brand ambassador and advocate for mental health through PDAN since they first started, I believe, back in 2013-ish. So it was like the very beginning. So I've been with them for a while now, and it's been an amazing experience. What drew me to wanting to study psychology, clinical psychology, is just my personal experiences in life. Growing up, it wasn't the best childhood, but I wanted to learn more about human behavior and what causes mental illness, because I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. And I was diagnosed throughout my life, starting at 15 years old and getting more and more these different diagnoses, and I just simply wanted to understand it. And then it turned into a passion of mine. I lost 5 people that I loved to suicide, and it's a struggle. It's hard to be that young. Lost my first best friend when we were both 15 to suicide. She died by suicide, and after that, I felt lost. So I didn't want to feel lost anymore. So that's what got me started. And now it's turned into a passion. I've been working in the mental health field for 10 years now, a little over 10 years, actually. This year will probably make the 11th year I've been working in the mental health field. And my degree is in clinical psychology. I'm not a doctor yet, working on it, but I do work in behavioral health. And I'm also a youth mentor. I speak around the world just like Jeff, and I speak to different populations, but my favorite population to speak to are youth, the children, because I want to be the voice that I wish I had when I was younger, if that makes any sense. So that's basically my story there, without going too deep into everything. And it just was an amazing thing to meet Jeff through Personality Disorders Awareness Network. Mr. Frederick Bien introduced us, and he's the one who runs PDAN. He started it. He's the founder.
Yeah, director of PDAN. They're doing some great work over there. I didn't realize you'd been involved since 2013. So boy, I am a newbie compared to you. No, it was kind of neat. I was speaking in Atlanta and thought, oh well, I'll just meet Fee, put a face with a name here, and we just had some dinner and hit it off right off the bat. And I think we both kind of had the thought, boy, this is somebody that I could work with, and we could do some stuff together moving forward.
Very down to earth, very down to earth. When I first met Jeff, this guy is just really like on earth here. He's here with us, so this is good. A lot different from a lot of doctors that I work with and have met, and through this whole journey, because that's what this is just a journey right now. And that's what made me want to work with you, the fact that you're just so down to earth.
It's always nice to meet a mental health professional who's actually on earth, huh? yeah, so to speak, right? A lot of them kind of up there in the clouds somewhere.
It's so true.
No.
But no. So a lot of people, I know we have some new viewers. Thank you guys for joining us. We've been going for about 10 minutes now, but so you guys didn't miss much. But I know a few of you had addressed the chat issue. If the chat box isn't below the video, you might want to look to the right on your screen. You should be able to see the live chat. It should say live chat, and you'll see a few comments from Jeff and I both saying hello. Jeff says welcome, and I say please introduce yourselves. Welcome. So let us know if you're still having issues with the chat. You should be able to see it though on the right side if it's not below.
I do have a couple of private messages here, Fee, saying people are having trouble accessing the chat. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but I don't see any other comments over there. I don't know if
Trish is there. Trish is there. Trish just said hello. Trish just said hello. So the chat is open. I would encourage viewers who are having issues.
Nobody else has it anymore, huh?
Right. Well, I suggest if you have an issue, maybe restart your browser, maybe reopen the video. And also, again, if it's not below the video, for some people it's to the right of the video, and it's easy to miss if your browser isn't fully open. It's just kind of tucked away on the side there. But you do have to open it to be able to see it. So I hope that helps. Everybody has different computers, so I don't know what you're saying. If you have a Mac, I don't have a Mac, I have a PC. So my chat box is to the right of the video, if that helps anybody.
This person says, I'm not able to connect. Another person says, I see no live chat or options. You all are on the YouTube link that we posted most recently, correct? That is the right link to be on, the actual YouTube channel.
Yeah, Trish, were you having any issues with accessing the video or the chat when you click the link? Maybe not, because she sent a message, so I don't think she's had any issues. So okay, so the link that you clicked to join the video chat, probably from Facebook, the link to join the video is on. Okay, all right. So that was a subscriber who came in. So if you guys are having issues clicking from the link, try to access the live video from my channel. If you just go to my channel page and click on the actual live video, it's going to show you that there's a live video going on. Try accessing it through there. Perhaps that'll help you out a little bit.
And how do they get to your channel page again, just to be clear for people?
So if you're on YouTube and you're looking at the video, my name, Felicia Johnson Author, should be there, and you can it's right under the video. You'll see a little circle with my face on it, and just click on my face and you'll see my channel. It'll show my videos and everything, and just try to click through there. That's how Trisha said she got to it, not through Facebook, but actually through YouTube.
So maybe try going straight to YouTube and going to Felicia.
Right. Thank you, Trisha. That was so nice of you. Thank you for helping us out there.
Click on your face, huh? One of the few times you're giving people permission to touch your face.
I don't know. Okay, so I guess we can continue with our discussion. We have quite a few viewers, and there are still new people I see joining. Again, welcome everybody. Welcome you guys to introduce yourselves in the chat if you can access it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still getting messages here, but the best thing to do is probably just to go straight to YouTube and look you up that way, Felicia Johnson Author. Okay, well, do we want to pick up where we left off? I know that, one of the things that we talked about when we met was you just talking about your passion for the stigma that there is in mental health in general, and working to eliminate that stigma. Did you want to share any thoughts on that?
Sure, yes. We actually have a group on Facebook called SOS, and it stands for Stamp Out Stigma. It is a movement, actually, where we are trying to get the whole community to come together to stamp out the stigma that's on mental health issues. Now, if you're not sure what it's usually something that a group or a person or an organization may look at in a negative light and talk negatively about it, or as if it doesn't exist. And in this case, it's mental illness. I used to self-stigmatize. It's easy how we can do that when we're scared of things that we don't understand. We tend to try to pretend it doesn't exist or repress it or just ignore it altogether. And that is part of stigmatizing. I was told that mental illness did not exist when I was a kid. I was told all kinds of scary things that I won't go deeply into, but again, that's the reason why I started studying clinical psychology, so that I could understand. And now that I do understand, I want to help others understand so that the stigma can go away. And one person can't do it. It takes a community. It's a community effort. So that's my that's why I want to do it. It's a huge passion of mine, and I believe it can be done. The more we talk about it, I think the more it'll become less stigmatized and more comfortable for people to talk about their issues. Just like if a person had diabetes or asthma, we should be able to talk about mental illness the same.
Yeah, I think another maybe version of that I've seen, unfortunately, and I don't know to what degree this is as prevalent in other countries. I know we have some people from other countries jumping on here. Maybe feel free to share in the chat with us. But one of the things that I've unfortunately seen multiple times with clients is them actually going to other physicians for medical treatment. And then sometimes actually being told this, sometimes they weren't actually told it, but that was the message that they got is, oh, well, we're looking at your chart here. You know, you have some sort of a psychiatric diagnosis, so this may just all be in your head. And so my clients actually not getting the medical treatment that they legitimately need because some physician without mental health training even didn't understand it. So I think it's not only an issue for the general public, but it's a problem in some sects of the medical field here.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. So that goes back to that whole people not understanding, because that definitely contributes to why there's such a stigma on mental health issues. Like you said, some people may be told it's all in their head when there could be behavioral health issues involved. So that's why we call it mental health issues, because it's not just one thing all the time. There's different things. And I think one of the things that really fascinated me when I was learning how many people got BPD mixed up with bipolar disorder. And there's a huge difference. Whenever I tell my story and I'm on stage, I include my best friend, my late best friend who died by suicide, Holly. Holly was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, aka BPD, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And a lot of the questions I get is, okay, aren't they the same thing? No. And Jeff, I'll let you explain that since you work really well with the BPD population with your CBT.
Did you want me to say some of the differences between BPD and bipolar disorder specifically?
Yeah, and maybe talk a little bit about how CBT sort of helps with that, because we do have a lot of viewers, especially from my page, that struggle with borderline personality disorder.
Okay, I mean, I would say probably as far as BPD versus bipolar disorder, you know, when I'm working with someone, there's really three things that we're looking at, and I'm sort of training them to watch in themselves and that I'm watching in them. And the first thing has to do with the trigger. I mean, bipolar disorder is mostly, if not completely, biological. So the mood swings are typically biologically triggered. And some people don't know the difference between, like they will say, you know, he said something and pissed me off and I got all manic and went and did this, that, or the other. But that's really not how a mood swing works with bipolar disorder. As you know, Fee, having had bipolar disorder, I mean, you can be having a decent day or a decent week, but if it's time for that neurology swing to kick in, it just kind of kicks in and you just flatten out and get depressed.
Right.
Or a person could be having a decent day or a decent
manic.
If it's time for that neurology swing to kick in, it just kind of kicks in and goes up and people start to get manic. So the bipolar mood swing is biologically triggered, typically. I say typically because stress in general can certainly bum a person out. Stress in general can sometimes sometimes cause a manic episode. But there's no environment. I can't tell you that I don't like your red hair today, and you swing into a manic episode. I mean, that's not.
No.
But that sort of is how that works with BPD. The
right.
BPD.
Well, a lot of dietary issues too. Dietary issues can contribute to bipolar triggers too. What we eat, what we drink.
Yeah, absolutely. The BPD mood swings, then, they always have to do with something that happens in life. They always have to do with some environmental trigger, some button getting pushed, so to speak. So that's one of the things we look for. Is the trigger an environmental trigger? Does it have to do with something that somebody said, or was it biological in some way? And the second thing we sort of teach people to look at is the quality of the mood itself. I was talking with a psychiatrist a little while back that she was even annoyed that we still use the term mood swing with bipolar disorder. I mean, she says they're not mood swings, they're neurology swings, or they're energy swings. I mean, so with bipolar disorder, it's really more just about kind of energy up and then energy down. Now, on the energy up side of the swing, people will say things like, I feel happy or excited or euphoric or sped up, but it's just because they have all this energy. And then on the energy down side of the swing, people will say, I feel sad or lethargic or depressed, but it's just because they don't have any energy. So with bipolar disorder, it's really just about energy up and energy down. It's not about guilt or shame or abandonment or hatred or those kinds of things. The BPD mood swing, I mean, it really is about real human mood. When people with BPD feel anxious, they feel really anxious. When they feel angry, they feel really angry. If they hate you, they really hate you. If they hate themselves, they really hate themselves. But they're real human moods. They just feel them so much more intensely. So it's a real feeling. It's real emotions. It's not just energy sort of up and down.
And one of the most classic symptoms of BPD is, like you said, the extreme highs and lows where it's like the very black or white. It's not that somebody can make you upset and they're still a good person. Sometimes, like you said, they could really grow to hate a person just because of an action that is not so good. Suddenly they may become a bad person, not have the action looked at as a bad thing, but the person is looked at as a bad person because of the action.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of people they'll go online, they'll print off those 9 criteria for BPD and they'll read them. And, half the time people, you have no idea what they're talking about with the clinical language that's in there. One of the criteria says, it talks about a pattern of unstable relationships alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. And that's really just what you described in everyday terms. It's, when we idealize somebody or something, we see them as all good. When we devalue somebody or something, we see them as all bad. You hear the term black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking for that. Right. And when we think in that way in relationships, obviously the top part of that criteria comes true. Relationships become intense and unstable, and you think somebody's the best person on the face of the earth, and they say one thing, and it's not that they're still a good person, but you saw a little red flag. It's that you hate that person.
Right. Trisha asked a really good question. She said in the chat, can bipolar go away after years of treatment? She said, I used to be very up and down for many years from age 15. That's when I was diagnosed as well, Trisha. And it says, but she was treated as an adult in her 30s. And a few years ago, she went off all her meds and she said she felt much better.
Do you want to speak to that, having had bipolar?
Well, I still live with bipolar disorder and I'm in my 30s. So I'm living through what Trisha said that she went through, but she says that she feels better now. In my experience, and just speaking with my psychiatrist, I was told that the prognosis can be good, but there are people who are on medication for the rest of their lives. sort of like a person who has diabetes, their pancreas stopped working. Unless they get a new pancreas, they're going to probably have to take insulin for the rest of their lives. And it's the same with bipolar disorder. If it doesn't go away, so to speak, which I don't think it really can do that, it's some people are on medication for the rest of their lives. Some people, they can do behavioral health therapy and learn to live with it. And I recommend both if necessary, but not all people need to be on medication forever.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly agree with that. I think depending upon, mental illness with any other illness, I mean, you can have a mild case of something or a moderate case of something or a severe case of something. And a lot of people may just have very mild cases of bipolar disorder. And, those are probably people who can end up not having to be on medications and use a lot of the behavior management skills to manage their bipolar. But yeah, for people that have moderate or severe bipolar, I mean, just about everybody, if not everybody that I've worked with, does have to be on medications their entire life. Now, one thing I would say is, I think it's really why you brought this up to begin with, is there's a lot of confusion between bipolar and BPD.
Yes.
And sometimes people are misdiagnosed. Now, I'm not saying anybody in this chat's misdiagnosed. We don't diagnose people we can't see here, but I'm just saying.
Hi, Annie.
It's a common, hey, there's Annie. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty common thing that we'll see is somebody diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but then once you work with them a while, you realize, now this is probably more BPD. And BPD is something that we do see symptoms reduce over time, and especially as people seem to get up into their 40s, a lot of the impulsivity and those kinds of things will diminish, if not go away. Mm-hmm. Now, they still oftentimes are, have the abandonment kind of belief and feel the experience of rejection a lot more and get their feelings hurt a lot more than everybody else. And some of those BPD things are still present, but you do see a lot of the aggression, a lot of the impulsive behaviors, those sorts of things do sort of peter out, usually when people hit their 40s. So, sometimes. Sometimes they don't. But sometimes what is happening, if those symptoms just go away, is that it was really probably a little bit more BPD than it was bipolar. Mm. Because as you point out, true bipolar really usually doesn't just go away. Yeah.
And my bipolar disorder is genetic. It runs in my family on my father's side. So I was aware of it once I started educating myself, even though a lot of my family are very close-minded, even though my father was in the military when he was diagnosed. So he got an official diagnosis, and that's how I put two and two together once I started learning things. But I think that when a lot of people are diagnosed with things and they don't really understand it, or nor do they try to seek to educate themselves, that's when the stigma comes. That's when you sort of are pushed into a way of life that's unhealthy. Unfortunately, my father self-medicates with alcohol. He still struggles with bipolar to this day, and he's in his 50s. So I think it's situational, but also too, it's how you take care of yourself. If you take care of yourself, the prognosis can be good.
Yeah, and I think people can learn to manage what doesn't just go away, so It doesn't affect their life nearly as much as it did, even though to some extent they may live with it the rest of their life.
Right. Trish said that sometimes she still gets depressed, but she said not really high very much. She has a lot of anxiety, and her doctor told her that she was hypomanic when she was anxious, when she felt severely anxious. That's really interesting to be called, the doctor say it's hypomania when she said she feels anxious. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sometimes say what's what. I mean, I guess they're both, anxiety and hypomania are both increased. They both involved increased arousal in one way or another.
Yeah, but they're two totally different things. So, trust me, from being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and bipolar, when I'm hypomanic, it's totally different than anxiety for me. Woo.
I think that's part of what's important with treatment, is helping people sort of be able to tease out the difference, because some people might have anxiety and bipolar, as you pointed out. Or some people might have BPD and bipolar. Yeah. So then they've got to sort out what's what. So I think that's part of one of the important things of learning to get better is recognizing sort of what is what. But if your doctor's having trouble recognizing it, then sometimes it takes a little longer than people would like.
What Trish said, she said in the next comment that she felt like she was, she thought she was misdiagnosed, but that does not explain things that happened before, that she said that she was ever diagnosed to begin with. And when she was first put on anxiety meds, that's when she started feeling manic. So that's another chemical thing. I mean, not what medication might work for one person might not work for the other person. And I always tell people that, because if somebody will say to me, oh, okay, I struggle with bipolar as well. Have you taken lithium? No, I don't take lithium. But they think everybody who's bipolar takes lithium. I think, yes, there are a lot of misdiagnoses out there, but then also too, a lot of people they might have the right diagnosis, but they could be put on the wrong medication. That does happen. It really does. That's why we have to educate ourselves on our medication as well as our mental health issues.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people feel like guinea pigs being tried on this and tried on that. And that, I hate to see that, but sometimes it's necessary to, unfortunately, with the quality of the medications we have as of today, they have to be in your system for a little while, different amounts of time for different meds, but to determine if they're going to be effective or not. So unfortunately, people sometimes do have to go through those test runs to see what
Annie,
works. What
Annie says that BPD, her diagnosis actually changed her life. And I would like to know, because that's a very, I don't know how to make heads or tails of that sentence. It simply says my BPD diagnosis changed my life. I don't know, is that in a positive way, or what do you mean by that, Annie? Because I'm really interested right now to know what you mean by how BPD, the diagnosis changed your life. What'd you say?
To know if it was a positive thing or a negative thing. Is that what you're asking?
Right. Or if a mix of both. It could be anything. It could be like a roller coaster or journey. I mean, when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, at first, it was like a roller coaster. It changed my life too. But once I educated myself, I actually started to feel better, because I was like, this makes sense. Now this makes sense, right? Kind of like if being diagnosed with asthma or diabetes or something, you have these symptoms and you're having these breathing issues and things that you don't know what's going on. You might think it's just bronchitis or something. You go to the doctor and they're like, it's asthma. You're like, oh, okay. You get relief because you know what it is. So, I really would like to hear Annie's explanation on that, about that sentence.
Yeah, I don't know if Annie wants to chime in what she means by that. That'd be great.
She did. She just said it was positive. It was a positive thing for her.
Yeah, I am not. I think I'm having an issue with my chat here. I will just say that in general, that's a pretty common experience. Is people, because they come in, they will say, "Well, I just thought I was crazy." Okay, but there's a name for it, and other people have this thing, and I can start, and there's treatment for this thing. So I can kind of start to understand it now, and I know that there's something that I can do for it. And so that is a common experience for a lot of people.
It is, truly. Should we get
just I'm sorry, Fee, just to
else, and thank you guys for emailing your questions. We found a lot of them really interesting. Trish, your question, I believe we addressed last week when we chatted, but we can let Jeff sort of, if Jeff, did you have any comments about that? About Trish's experience, the email she sent us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think I got lost there. Well, one of the things one of the things I was starting to say there when my screen kind of froze up was just related to the people getting the diagnosis and feeling better. I was just going to link it back to the stigma thing quickly.
Yeah.
You have a lot of clinicians that will say, oh, I don't even want to make the diagnosis because there's a stigma. Well, so a lot of people are not getting the diagnosis that they actually have, so they're never be able to sort of experience that sense of, oh, there's something I can do here, and they're never getting treatment for what they really need to get treatment for. So I think that's directly related to the stigma also.
Absolutely. And Annie, I'm not sure if you're still having issues with your chat, but Annie said something very, very nice about you. She said, Jeff, being my first therapist that diagnosed me was a life changer. It was a relief to know why I was the way I was. So compliments to you, Jeff.
It's always nice to have people say nice things about you, isn't it? we get a few of the others.
Yeah, you get a mix. You gotta have a mix. Keep things balanced in the world. So that was really cool of Annie. Annie, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for clarifying that. I can relate to you in that way. Just when having the diagnosis, the bipolar diagnosis, really it did give me a lot of relief as well. Like Jeff said, knowing that there are treatment options, knowing that you don't have to be left to suffer is a huge relief. And it's also good to, I think, for me, at least talk about it openly. And a lot of people are still shocked when I tell them that I struggle with bipolar disorder. Just because people can either hide it well or manage it well, manage their diagnosis well, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I have no problem talking about it. People think I'm crazy for that. Fine, but I'm actually crazy for other things, not about talking about my mental illness. That's not crazy.
There are other reasons you're crazy, and that's a topic,
other reasons.
Topic for the podcast. Is that what you're saying?
So we have some awesome questions though from our viewers. And again, I talked about Trish's email that we got last week. Did you want to talk about that, Jeff?
I don't have that in front of me at this point.
Oh, okay. All right. It was the story. Let's see. It was the question that she had pertaining now to herself and her family members. She said near the end of October 2014, her husband's little brother, who was 29 years old, was murdered while away on a business trip. He was killed by a colleague that he was traveling with. They both were at the sheriff. They were both sheriff's deputies in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They did not know each other personally, but knew of each other from work. Her brother-in-law was actually a stand-in for someone that was sick and couldn't go, and he was married to his high school sweetheart. They had kids, and they found out they were having another child. And it just, do you remember that email at all? It's pretty lengthy, but
yeah, no, I did read the email at the time. I don't remember the exact question.
The questions, there's a couple questions. She wanted to know, how does she work through the trauma and the situation and not be paranoid about the possibilities, knowing full well that her husband could die at any time, but likely won't die anytime soon. So I think that question has to do more with the anxiety. How does she work through the traumatic experience she's had, but how can she not be so paranoid knowing that her husband is going to die, but it may not be soon? Like, I guess just not knowing. The not knowing is, am I right there, Trish?
And so the deaths have triggered this thought of, oh my gosh, I could lose my husband.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. Is that right?
She wants to know also, how can she find peace when she deals with it daily and she still has a long way to go in the court system. Basically she wants to know about how she can deal with this not knowing and being paranoid, but also too, how can she find peace so that she's not so paranoid and get through it every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing. Those two things I think are obviously related. If being okay with not knowing is hard for a lot of people, but as people can learn to tolerate uncertainty a little bit better, I mean, that's when the peace comes, because you don't have those thoughts, I have to know, I have to know, I have to know. You can really start to develop some acceptance that I'm not going to know. He is going to die sometime. I'm not going to know when that is. And I'm okay with not knowing what that is. But also at the same time, recognizing just because I heard about and experienced sort of secondhand these other deaths in my life, there's no correlation with, my husband dying. There's no, because these things happened, it does not increase the likelihood that he will die any sooner. Although she's continuing to get that triggered if there's, ongoing court stuff, if there's stuff in the media. I mean, if you're around that, you're going to be continually triggered to have those thoughts. But it's a matter of gradually trying to recognize that there's no increased likelihood that you'll lose him sooner. And that, you will lose him someday, and you can't control that.
Right.
You just can't control that. That's obviously, I think that would be hard for anybody, but again, I don't know people's diagnoses here watching, but for people that do have BPD and have that abandonment criteria, part of that is, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people struggle with that have that is loss. They just do loss a lot harder than everybody else does loss. And that sort of cycle of grief that people know about. Most people kind of work through that and eventually come out of it. And people with those strong abandonment related issues, it's just a lot harder for them to come out of it. Yeah. So that difficulty.
Annie made a good point. She said, what ifs causes anxiety? That's true. The what ifs. She said, when I get tunnel vision and what if and having to know and have the answers makes the anxiety much worse.
Yep.
And so that is a good point.
Yeah. So it's hard to convince yourself, but again, it's coming to an acceptance that you don't have to know. You won't know. There's no way to know. So as long as you have to know, you're creating this pressure and this anxiety. And you're absolutely right about the what ifs. That's, in our cognitive lingo, we have these cognitive distortions, and that's what, exactly. They call it the fortune telling and the magnification. What if this happens? What if that happens? And that's the exact thought process that leads to all anxiety, regardless of anybody's diagnosis, is this predicting about what might happen badly in the future, and then our inability to deal with it. So, right. When people get that tunnel vision, sometimes the best thing to do is just, use what we call a distraction technique. Just get your mind somewhere else. It's kind of like just reaching your hand up and changing the channel on the radio. You just go to a different channel for a while.
Right.
Now, we don't want people to do that all the time, or it's going to keep them worse. Okay? But if you're just in tunnel vision and you're getting worked up and you're getting worked up and you're getting worked up, those distractions can be helpful just to go somewhere else in your mind so your arousal can decrease a little bit, and then you can think a little more clearly to try to think differently about it. Recognize there is no increased likelihood. There's no evidence that he's gonna die any sooner. If there's evidence that he's safe, you can remind yourself of that. And just reorient yourself to the present and what's the likelihood of this happening in the present. And again, recognizing that there's no way we can control ultimately what happens to people.
Absolutely.
There's an acceptance there as well.
You brought up a good point there when you said putting your hand up and changing the dial. When you're constantly watching the news and listening to the radio, and it's just a bunch of just really depressing things, that can add to that anxiety. Sometimes I have to go without watching the news for a while because some of that stuff can trigger a lot of things, and it can feed that paranoia that you have about someone that you love dying. On the news every day, you always hear about somebody losing their loved one, and they're on TV and they're crying and stuff. That does not make it any better. So I agree with Jeff. Sometimes you might need to just change the channel. Another question, she said, what about hate versus forgiveness while still going through all of this because of the mistrials that they've been having, battling the court cases? She's battling hate versus forgiveness right now.
Hate towards the person that committed the murder, or towards the...
It sounds like the system, because she's saying they're having mistrials and they keep having to go through am I right, Trish? Because she's not talking about the person, she's talking about the system right now.
Yeah, I mean,
and the killer. Yeah, the killer. Okay.
I think it's just important to recognize that even though something is unfair, and you could survey 100 people out of 100 might agree with you that yes, this is unfair. The reality is that it happened. The reality is that it does keep getting postponed, right. And the more we continue to, in our cognitive lingo, those are what are called should statements. The longer we sort of, in our minds, insist that some aspect of reality shouldn't be the way that it is, and an inability to accept that it is what it is. Accept doesn't mean agree. It doesn't mean condone. You can still think it sucks. 100 other people can still think it sucks, but just accepting that it is. Because as long as we in our minds insist that it shouldn't be, I mean, that's the thinking that is going to continue to fuel anger, and anger in extreme form is hatred. It's just really the opposite of forgiveness, which is the other.
She's saying that she has more hate for the killer. And I'm going to say the justifiable anger is there. I'm going to validate that you can hate what this person has done and want them to be punished because they killed someone. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm going to go ahead and validate that for you, Trish. The anger is justifiable. That's not irrational.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, it's certainly understandable. There's not really much, if anything, that could be worse than what happened. And then, even though something's it's understandable that you got angry and that you experienced hate, may not be helpful for you if you continue to hate. And right. That's the question that you have to ask yourself. And if it's not helpful for you, if the hate is hurting you in some way, then it's still a matter of working your normal forgiveness process in a situation that's just gonna be a lot harder.
Right.
But you do the same thing. I mean, however you've forgiven other people in your life. I always tell people it's kind of like losing weight. Like for people that have slower metabolisms, it's a lot harder. You got to work a lot harder to lose the weight, but you got to do the same stuff. So it's the same forgiveness type of work. It's just a lot harder based upon such a heinous situation.
Right. Right. And on the topic of forgiveness, Annie says that she struggles with forgiveness, and she made a really good point here. She said, but forgiveness is about you, which is very true, and not the other person. And continuing to hold on to it, she says, is like swallowing poison every day. And it doesn't mean that it's okay for you to hold on to that. Once you say you forgive, you don't have to forget. Like, it's not black and white. There may be some things that you'll never forget, like me being a survivor of child abuse. I forgave my abuser, but that was for me, not for that person. I don't talk to this person anymore, even though they're still around and about in our lives, in our family's lives. But I, through my forgiveness, have found it a lot, that I feel a lot better since I've forgiven this person. I'm not holding on to any guilt or shame or any of that, because I forgave and let that go. Now, this person may continue to do what they're doing, but that has nothing to do with me anymore.
Yeah,
so that
good.
was a really good point, Annie.
I think there's a lot of myths about forgiveness or irrational thoughts that keep people from forgiving. And a lot of people have the thought specifically, I'm not going to forgive because I'm not going to give that to them. Not going
Right.
to give them the satisfaction of my forgiveness. And if that's a thought that you have, then yeah, I mean, what Annie said is absolutely important to hear.
And that segues into Sandra's question. Sandra asked, how does one forgive someone who isn't sorry? And I'm thinking in this case, there may be a personality disorder with the person who is not sorry, a narcissistic person. I don't, I know that that it can be hard for a person with NPD to apologize. But Sandra wants to know for herself, how can she forgive this person who just won't apologize?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously makes it harder, but you know, one of the important principles with forgiveness is it's a one-way street. It's easier if the other person says, "Hey, I'm so sorry," because then we can have some empathy, some sympathy for them maybe, and we can grant the forgiveness a little easier. But with forgiveness, we don't have to hear that. Forgiveness is a one-way street. Trust is a two-way street. We have to see certain behaviors out of other people for us to be able to build trust, and
Right.
vice versa. So, I mean, trust is a two-way street, but forgiveness can be granted even if the other person does nothing to warrant it. Now, I don't know Sandra or her situation. I mean, obviously, if the person's continuing to violate her in some
Right.
way, I mean, then is where, you know, boundaries come in, and we need to take steps that we can to keep ourselves around safe people and not
Right.
open ourselves up to people who are going to continue to wrong us and not be sorry. You know,
And if the person is holding something over your head, perhaps trying to gaslight you into thinking that, you know, your pain or your upset is unreasonable, that you're just crazy because you feel wronged by something they did, then that's just a very unhealthy situation, because you know, gaslighting is not good. Okay, a person's not going to apologize if they're trying to make you feel like this thing didn't happen, or that what happened is because of you, therefore they don't need to be sorry. Like Jeff said, you gotta sort of get yourself away from that situation, because it's not you. Usually when you've seen things with your own eyes and you've experienced them and felt them, it's not, you know, you don't have to have this person telling you you're crazy, and that, you know, that they're not sorry, or they're not going to apologize. You need to be able to forgive and get yourself out of that kind of situation, because that's a very dangerous situation to be in.
yeah, I mean, anytime you have somebody in your life that's wronging you or hurting you on a continuous basis and not sorry for it, it's a time for some boundaries and to make some changes in the relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have another question that we received from Lisa. Lisa asks, what do you do when your parent is a registered drug prescription addict and has been told he needs to go to see a psychiatrist, but he refuses help because he claims he has no problem and keeps blaming his child or children for all of his issues, constantly manipulates his children, and he keeps faking his problems so that his problems, and then they're asking, can he be committed for that if the child is this person's POA? So you've got two questions here. One is, what do you do when your parent is a registered abusing drugs and prescription drugs, and they refuse to see a psychiatrist? They blame everybody else for their problems. What do you do with that? And then the second question is, can I have him committed?
I think we first of all have to give the obligatory, neither one of us are attorneys here, so we can't give legal advice. And also I mean, the laws are different in different states about what you can commit a person for and what you can't commit a person for. My guess would be probably not for what you're describing, but I'd probably need some more information to, you know, be too certain about that. But what do you do about it? I mean, it sounds like we're dealing with adults here.
Right.
So, I mean, there's just not too much you can do.
Yeah, and I'll chime in there. I'm a child of someone who abuses alcohol and has been in trouble with the law constantly because of the drug abuse. And I'm his oldest child. All I can do is try to be there for him. But if they don't want help, and this is a really hard pill to swallow, if they don't want help, you can't force it upon them. It I mean, trust me, I've tried. I've tried. My father was the first person I ever talked out of suicide, and I was 10 years old when it happened. So he's been trying to kill himself for years, but it's hard. It's really hard to see the people you love continue to hurt and want to blame others and not take responsibility for their actions and what they're doing. I think that's the only way they're really going to be able to move forward. They have to take responsibility and say, okay, I have a problem. Okay, when we're talking about addicts, they have to realize that they have a problem first, and then the work begins. If they don't want to say that they have a problem or even acknowledge the fact that they have a problem and put it on everyone else, then there's going to have to be another way to try to reach this person. And unfortunately, you may not be able to. And that's the harsh reality. And I'm speaking from personal experience here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to what you said other than if their refusal to get help for themselves is hurting you or your family in some way, we're back to the boundaries discussion. And you don't get to choose how they behave, but you get to choose how much interaction they have with you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a limited relationship with both my parents, but limited doesn't mean non-existent. You don't have to push the people away from your lives unless you find that, your life is in danger or somebody else's life is in danger in some sort of way. Then I would say that might be the time when you need to go ahead and put your safety and the safety of others first. And perhaps completely remove yourself from that situation. But if you have to limit, do not think of limited as non-existent. I used to think that. I used to think, well, limiting means I can't talk. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means for your own mental health and stability, you need to go ahead and set those boundaries. And who knows, it could help them wake up and see the light too. You never know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially for people that do struggle with that all or nothing thinking. It's easy to think, oh, I have a relationship with my parents or I don't.
Right.
And there's different levels. You can limit it, but it doesn't have to be non-existent. I think that's really good.
Yeah. And okay, so we have one last question before we wrap it up, because I think it's getting close to time. This person, Chelsea, she said, I suffer with BPD, and your book, Her, and the OK Danny Boy books touched me so much, and I felt every word that you wrote. What I want to know is, did you write these books from personal experiences or experiences from people that you know? And did it help you or help them? That's a really loaded question. But first of all, Chelsea, thank you so much for your compliments about the books, because that was actually my goal. My goal in writing the books is to actually help people, in particular youth, and also people who know people who struggle with mental health issues, and they just want to know what the person they care about feels like or what's going on in their mind. So that was my whole reasoning behind writing Her and the OK Danny Boy series. In Her, the main character has borderline personality disorder. I wrote that book in homage to my late best friend, Holly. And a lot of people don't know this, but the title Her has really nothing to do with the story. It just has to do with the fact that I wrote it for her, Holly. So a lot of the people don't know that. Now you guys know that. And the OK Danny Boy series is about a young man who struggles with not only a mental health issue, but he has juvenile diabetes. So that book is to help people sort of open their minds up to see how we treat people when we know that they have a physical illness versus how we treat them when we know that they have a mental illness. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and yes, all of this is based on real life, based on things that I've experienced, based on things that my friends have experienced, and also my studies and my work. A lot of the clinical information is written within the story. When the kids are doing their DBT exercises or they're in coping skills groups, the little worksheets and things that they do are actually written into the book, and you learn as they learn and you heal as they heal. So it's a journey. While the story is written in fiction for you to relate to it, the books have the heart of the textbooks so that you can actually learn what's happening in the minds of these characters who struggle with their own sets of mental health issues. So I'm glad that you were able to find the messages of hope within the books, even though the books are kind of hard to read. They're pretty heavy because they're based on real life. I get very visceral and I do not hold back, but that's because life doesn't hold back. It'll drop the anchor right down on us. So it's best that we be prepared for it. So that's why I wrote the books. And if it looks like it helped you, your last question was, has it helped the people that I wrote it for? Obviously it's helped you. So yes, I'm glad it helped you. So that was the last question.
Okay, that timing was probably pretty good. I'm going to have to hop off pretty quickly here.
Yep.
Final thoughts you wanted to share, Fee, or questions you wanted to ask, or anything you wanted to end with here?
Yeah, I'd just like to know what our audience would like to know more about. I see Annie and Trisha has been commenting, and I see other people are in there, but they haven't been talking. Maybe they're still having trouble with the chat. If you have questions or if you have ideas or things that you want to know more about, please send us an email if you're having trouble with the chat and you can't talk to us right now. The email address is it's okay to talk about trauma at gmail.com. And that's all one word squished together. But if anybody wants to leave any comments in the chats, Jeff and I are both open to answer any questions you have or be open to hearing your thoughts and things that you would like to hear us talk more about. Because we're going to try to make this a regular thing, right, Jeff? Okay, so Trish wants to talk more about DBT, and that's a good thing. We can do that. I know Jeff probably plans to talk more about CBT, right, Jeff? All right. Well, thank you. So we'll close out and feel free to write to us. Like I said, you guys are more than welcome to message us anytime on Facebook, on Google, or through the email that I mentioned.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. And I'm back.
Oh, okay. Well, Trish said that she wants to talk more about DBT in the future. Perhaps we can talk more about DBT and CBT in the future, both of them together. Because I do more DBT. I specialize in DBT. I'm actually getting my certification right now. I'm training for my certification right now. So hopefully by the time we do a bigger broadcast on this, we'll be able to do the CBT DBT battle.
Now I know the battle, is it?
Well, I don't know. I'm more of an advocate for the DBT side, but yeah, I'm sure you and I will be able to duke it out.
I think they complement each other well.
They do. You're right. I'm just messing with you. Trish wants to know if we have a blog. Trish, you can go to my website. It has all my links to my everything, my Instagram, my Facebook, my blogs, my books. And that email address is FeliciaJohnsonAuthor.com. And I will type that out. And you can get all the links from there. And Jeff, Trish wants to know about how she can connect with you.
I'm actually in the process of transferring what I've had is an email list. I'm transferring that into a blog. It's not quite in blog form yet, but it will be available soon. And it'll be on my website, jeffrickenbaugh.com. It'll also be at my Facebook group, the Cognitive Behavioral Coaching and Leadership Development.
All right. So it's been fun, guys. Thanks so much for participating. And those of you who couldn't get on the chat this time, we hope that you'll be able to connect next time, but we're still grateful that you were here with us nonetheless. So everybody have fun and be safe. I know it's Super Bowl time, so have fun, guys.
Thanks for joining us.